I have to fess up, I'm not being medicated, so if I make a mess of this, I have no excuse.
I can give you some of my medication.
I might need some. And I'll take a leaf out of both Frank and John's book. My name is John as well, and I'll try and be frank. This is the funny hour, so you can relax. The single word, if you forget everything that happens after the opening slide here, and it even bounces, watch this. You can forget everything else. Is the word to remember, though, is alignment. If we align the low carbon economy with people's needs and wants, it'll happen. If you don't, you're pushing water upstream, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not a regular ESB guy. For some reason, they thought they put me in venture capital for 5 years, so I've lost all my nice skill sets and all that. So hence, I will try to genuinely be frank here and share some of the learnings. I also share a perspective from the utility viewpoint. I was at the European Utility Week conference 2 weeks ago in Amsterdam, and it was like a little self-help group. I thought I would be provocative by suggesting that utility model 1.0 is kind of grinding to a halt. Other people from S and others were saying, actually, it's already gone, it's broken so badly. The interesting thing, so it wasn't really provocative to say that, but the thing is, what does 2.0 look like from the utility perspective? And this is the piece that if we're talking about the future, most people think the future is electric as a choice of fuel. That's great. It may not necessarily be the electricity utilities that are involved in that future. So if they want to be involved, what do they need to do differently? How will they engage? Interestingly enough, ESB has been around for donkey's years, and most people, the first slide that they put up is ESB was established in 1927, and there are people in the room that know that mantra very well. However, one of the guys who became actually a star in Dragon's Den told us, before he became a star in Dragon's Den, he did some coaching on media, and he said, don't start with that. Start with the end message. And the end message is alignment, right? Nobody cares. Your past is behind you, right? What's new and relevant about you going forward is what they really want to hear. Interesting enough, ESB in its whole history never had an innovation strategy before. This year, for the first time ever, we have a board-approved innovation strategy that supports the overall corporate strategy. And actually, to pull me back out of venture capital and find somewhere useful for me to deploy, I became ESB's first head of external collaboration. So we're reaching out to this community and the wider community. But just before I start, I just ask one question, and like seriously, if you believe it, is there anybody in the room that kind of has a doubt about the climate change issue or anything like that? You know, are we generally, ask it a different way, does everybody believe climate change is happening? Show of hands. Okay, so we're kind of preaching to the converted here. So the question is, so what, right? That's the venture capital thing. It's like, okay, blah, blah, blah. So what? What are you going to do about it? So here's a couple of ideas that I'll share with you. And one of the themes we mentioned, actually, I met John in the elevator coming up, and I haven't met Frank before, so hi, Frank. But interesting enough, some of the themes, you see them, they're coming through. You might think it was orchestrated, but it wasn't. I promise. Okay, and we talk about the Industrial Revolution, so I'm glad I picked up on that theme. You're probably familiar with these 5 ways of innovation. So the big question is, that's all very good. And I think the information age, I think you'll all agree, is still going strong. But what's next? And the Green Way, the Adians here, have done an excellent report showing the size of the economy and the direction of travel. There are numbers out there. It's big. We mentioned it. It touches everything, right? It is kind of ubiquitous. And I picked up the paper on Friday when I was thinking, what will I say to you guys today? And I said I better look at the Irish Times and find something relevant. And I saw a picture of some seagulls. So and actually, I noticed on Aidan's report that the name of the company that actually is delivering this thing for seagulls is an Irish company. And if you look carefully, that's not a feeding trough for seagulls. That's a photosensor, right? So it detects sunlight and tells you when to switch on the light, therefore saving electricity. That's made by a company in Mayo called Selk, and they are the best photosensor makers on the planet. And this little thing here is called a digital ballast. That also saves energy, and you can dim and trim and control them, made by the same company. So this was the front page. It's literally, you pick it up. And I noticed in the back page, it's actually a job here in this building. So everywhere you go, and actually in today's times, there's a full page on saving energy. So you can't get rid of it. It's following you around everywhere. This slide is taken from the NVCA, and it looks like we're flatlining, but actually when you take into account, I think it's in Aideen's report as well, that's only 9 months for 2014. There's a little bit of a bounce coming back into it. These are the numbers for VC investment in the US in clean tech, right? Bearing in mind that clean tech is about 10 years old as an industry. So the average is about $2.5 billion a year in clean tech. So it's not too shabby. You can see it had a heyday there, 08 and 11, where about sort of, $1 and $6 kind of thing were invested in clean tech. So you're competing with software and some big sectors. So it has arrived. It's gone through some popularity challenges. And just to show some percentages on it there, you can still, the average there is about 9%. We're languishing around sort of 4-ish at the moment. So 4% of VC investment in the US goes to the clean tech sector. So it's still chunky. There's money to be made in it. And actually, that's 3/4. It's challenging to make that recovery. I think the key reasons are some of the exits have been slower than anticipated. You know, VCs don't get paid till there's a sell down. We've had some poster ones like Nest, $3 billion. So again, these are VC investment numbers. You know, Nest, one startup it's the poster boy, made over $3 billion on a sell down. And there are a couple of others. So there's a couple of, and if you think Tesla, I have a couple of pictures of nice cars later on, but you know, Tesla, who would have thought that the Americans would bypass the makers of the Prius and Toyota and all these guys and go straight for an electric car that's being very successful, you know, because they understand the market. And again, it's the alignment with the customer needs. Unfortunately, for people in the low carbon technology world, that's your incentive. You know, that's the underpinning one. And you could say, you know, you can look at that through two lenses. You could say, oh, that's shocking, the incentive's broken, kind of is a common one. Well, part of the reason is the economies of what we're talking about, the link with the economy. The economies have crashed, therefore the industrialization came to a little bit of a stutter, therefore emissions went down, therefore we're actually ahead of schedule on the carbon map, okay? So maybe we should have been ratcheting it in a bit quicker. But again, it shows that kind of seesaw, you know, unless... The biggest problem now is that we're actually ahead of program, so there's no carbon price signal. We had some companies overseas doing hydro projects in Malaysia and places to win carbon credits. We had to shut it down because the returns were in carbon credits. It's useless now, so no good. But you know, it's all well and fine if we're ahead of the carbon budget, but people don't have jobs. Not a great way to go forward. And it used to be an energy dilemma. You've probably seen this before. It was energy, especially national utilities like ourselves. We had to balance energy security with price. So nobody likes to have their lights turned off, but they'd also like to be able to afford electricity. And actually, one of the quotes that came was O-Power speaking at the conference, reminded us of Edison's vision when he commissioned his first power plant 100 years ago. He said his vision was to make electricity so cheap that only the wealthy people could afford candles. I thought, well, this is very noble. I was also thinking afterwards, there's a bunch of modern day Chinese equivalent Edisons in a number of provinces in China, thinking we're going to make solar so cheap that only the wealthy can afford to buy it from the grid. So we're on that journey. We're on that transition. And this was the case. Everything was fine when there was a reasonable carbon price signal and all that good stuff. You know, 5-6 years ago, it was $30 a ton or whatever it was. But this is what's happened now. And it's the Bill Clinton moment. It's the economy stupid. So we didn't rehearse this. These are the links. These are the real links. And if you look what's happened in Germany, there's a sequence of unfortunate events and unforeseen consequences that happened after Lehman's. You could track it all through. Fukushima happened as well. Nukes were closing. Tell you a little bit about, you were aware of the solar onslaught in Germany, but and a close down of gas turbine plants in Germany, which were very efficient at burning clean gas. But they replaced them with 4 gigawatts of brown coal, which is very inefficient. And actually emissions are going up, despite the fact that they spent billions on solar. So it's the economy stupid. If jobs are going to start migrating out of Germany or lights going off or whatever, not a good thing. So we need bums on seats. And the Germans saw this. In fairness to the Germans, I had one of the guys at German office look at the numbers. In the auto sector, it's about 100 years old, give or take a couple of years. There's about 750,000 jobs. In clean tech, after just a 10-year sprint, there's now one job in clean tech for every 2 jobs in the auto sector. So about 370,000 clean tech. So they developed an industry in Germany around this. Siemens and GE and the big OEMs are saying 30 to 40% of the revenues are already, they have vision of that next 2 or 3 years will be coming from clean tech sector. So from the utility perspective, this is how we map it. On the left-hand side, we need to decarbonize. Ireland's now 20% energy from zero carbon sources. 6 years' time, that'll be double, so it'll be 40%. In the middle piece, we're now moving to a different grid, and we have the experts in the room. But basically, we used to dispatch a small number of large plants to meet whenever you guys switch on a light switch, that it'll come on. Now, we're now moving to the other side. We're going to have to dispatch the load side because God is deciding when it's windy and sunny and all this stuff. So we don't have the luxury of dispatching the generation side anymore. So we've got to move to the demand side and dispatch load. So that's the transition we're going through. And we buy directional flows on the grid, and we need to control the loads. So this is the utility transition. And there will be winners and losers here. At the moment, the German utilities are losing badly. They didn't invest in they own, I don't know, something like 5% of the solar, something tiny, and yet they're suffering badly from it. And the German, if you take it's kind of a sign of the way things could go. It's the largest electricity market in Europe, but they have the lowest. The wholesale prices have halved now, gone down to 80, down to about 38 or so, 37. Didn't check it this morning, but kind of about halved on average. And the peak has dropped by 80% because of the impact of solar. And they're shutting down. They were commissioning plant and shutting them down, actually. So because they were planning on that great growth that disappeared and fell off a cliff. So, but the interesting piece is that the retail tariffs, Ireland were about 16, 17 cents a unit, 27, 28 cents in Germany. And the difference is the supports. They built 7 gigawatts of solar a year for 3 years in a row. I think it was about 3 or 4 the last year. And that was the expensive solar. And they now have to pay that back. And it's the difference in those supports. So if you look at the previous map, this is how it maps out where the innovation and the investment dollars are going. Energy efficiency, renewables, and energy management being a smart grid. And energy efficiency would include the electrification of heat and transport. So a quick look at energy efficiency. This is SEAI, McKinsey. This is the McKinsey curve. This should be indelibly imprinted on anybody's mind if they want to make money in this area. This is the no subsidy zone, so basically free carbon abatement, and that's the alignment piece. So you can see here lighting. We have an investment in a company called Nualight. ESB is through its fund. It went from sort of sub 1 million to over 30 million, exporting all over the planet. Because guess what? LED lights use less energy. They're actually a better product, and they're now moving into clever controls. So that's the kind of zone you want to be in, and everything else on the right, you need to have people are willing to pay a premium for decarbonising, or there's a subsidy in place. So Nualight, Cork, actually, thanks UCC for inviting me here today. Up the road from you there, Nualight, founded by his third startup, Professor Kelly, he's retired now, set up a fine company, and they are selling product, exporting from Ireland all over Europe, all over the US under big OEM brands. A huge success story. Kingspan, one of the multinationals in clean tech in Ireland. Not just in building insulation, but also they bought out Prove and small wind turbine maker in the UK, etc. Climote is one that this is a startup. They came out of the housing crash. They were smart homes. Nobody wanted fancy wiring in their homes. They said, well, one of the problems they noticed was they were getting called to the call center, how do you use the thermostat? So they said, we'll make a better one. They've 5,000, I think, already in place after 2 heating seasons, and everybody who has one loves it. And then these guys have arrived, the $3 billion dudes, and it's just a nice piece. And we spoke to Honeywell, who owned that market in the US, and they said, well, we had a fine piece of plastic on the wall. Nobody ever told us they didn't like it. And these guys came along and said, there's a latent customer need. They're quite happy to pay far more for something that looks good. I mean, you redecorate your house, and then you put something from the 60s, an ugly piece of plastic, or you can have an iPhone. That looks good. So that's what's selling. And the same here. I was at Amsterdam at the show, as I said, and I actually waited. That's a Tesla. I thought it was a Jaguar. They have 2 companies. One is 80, the other is 120 or something like that. taxis, and I grilled the taxi. I waited for a Tesla. I waited about 2 seconds because they get a faster loop through, and it's just a very pleasant. And you can see, look at the face of that taxi driver. Seriously, This is what people want. Give them what they want, and that's what it used to look like if you wanted an EV. That's a gee whiz. You don't have to. It's not a hair shirt zone. If you want to get traction, give them what they want. And in the renewable space, that's actually a piece of kit which has been deployed in Ireland for the first time. That's not Ireland there, as you have a photograph of it. That's a clever reflector technology from the US that works in that kind of lighting. Never going to get it done in 5. Quickly looking at renewable growth, the numbers you see peaked 2011 there, but I think if you realise that solar prices have halved in the interim, the gigawatt number is still strong. You don't have to spend as much to get the gigawatts of solar in there, so it's still it's not. This isn't alternative energy. It's 40+% of the market in generation, and that's also bearing in mind that a lot of the thermal new thermal is actually replacement plant. Okay, and the numbers are higher for Europe. So we looked at the Ireland Inc. problem, saying, okay, well, if we need to move forward, what are the options? And these were the options. And solar PV was ridiculously expensive, so it was and Ireland isn't renowned for its sun. But we looked at it again this year. So solar is the big mover. Wave, we've got some. I don't know if our Wave guys are here today. We have a huge resource of Wave. Ireland will have a place with one way or another, but it hasn't moved the dial as anything like the solar. And we know the Chinese have more to go. There was a drop in the solar tariff, I think John might be aware, and it didn't put a blip in the rollout. The Chinese said, oh, the new price is whatever. I says, oh, fine, it's just take that shipment and we'll give it to you at the new price. It was didn't even slow them down. They had that headroom in their system. And you can see what's happened here. It's phenomenal growth, you know what I mean? From, if you look at 10 years ago, it was basically nothing. It's just 30, our system's at 5 gigawatts, so put that in perspective, so it's 30 odd gigawatts there last year alone. And this is a very interesting one from the Fraunhofer Institute. This is if you're a utility guy, this brings tears to your eyes because in July, on the 21st of July last year, around about midday, 50% of the German grid came from solar panels alone. Now they've had tremendous problems with negative pricing and all sorts of stuff managing that. And you can see what happened to the gas plant. So if you're Siemens or GE planning to sell some combined cycle gas turbine plant, you have to wait till you unmothball now about 30 gigawatts before you get to sell a new one. So not good business for those dudes. But some say, so what? We're decarbonising, so fantastic. These are the winners here. The Chinese guys making lots of solar panels. Interesting, there's a Japanese in the top 5 actually, but China, I think it was 7 of the top 10 are Chinese, two Japanese and an American. So, and this is a piece of kit. These are our own guys. That's actually the first deployment of this reflector technology. So per square meter, you get it's the least cost solar for flat roofs. Basically, it costs a little bit more to install, but it generates more energy. So per square meter of flat rooftop, you get the most amount of energy. And we're trialing it in Ireland just to make sure our sun isn't broken here or something like that. It's on top of the roof of Leopardstown. And these are some other success stories from Ireland. I mean, Open Hydro, they're still going strong with the French. They've cracked the technology. That's the Kingspan turbine that they bought out at Proven CNF in Galway. That's the first tidal technology to export to a grid anywhere in the world. It was done in Ireland. Brinker turbines, now a Siemens technology. Again, not the cheapest electricity coming out of it. We actually buy it, so we know that. But it works perfectly. So energy management. Finally, this is the best diagram of the smart grid you will ever see. If you find a better one, send it on to me. But basically, there's 3 layers. That's the power layer, kind of as we know it, but now it's bi-directional. Sitting on top of that is the comms layer. So this is a whole bunch of other guys looking to sell kit in the comms layer. And where the vast majority of people are going to make lots of money is on the apps. So think of your Apple iPhone. Somebody's building a platform and they want you to come and play there. So get busy with the apps. And here's a bunch of the stuff you can do in it. And just a couple of quick examples of the Irish story. This is actually a photograph I took at the European Utility Week on the GE stand. This used to be called FMC Technologies in Limerick. They were bought out by GE last year. They're now a part of a GE product. They Dermot would know this. It's a piece of kit. We help them develop it in terms of trialing it and proving it works and et cetera, et cetera. It shows you where the faults are on the line, therefore you improve your availability, et cetera. Activation Energy jumped into the demand aggregation side here, and they sold down to probably the world's largest demand side aggregator, Enernoc, a US company, so they got an exit out of that. This is a very interesting one, actually, from an Irish perspective. We're talking about how do you get money from large utilities to small startup companies. You notice a few of the characters there. Brian Motherway is just behind the lens there. I took this photograph myself because I gave it. This is outside the Trinity Gallery, a science gallery. Next is John McSweeney, Head of Innovation Times, just retiring today, and Pat Rabbit. And then there's Tom Kelly from Enterprise. So we all work together to bring the first SBIR scheme to Ireland. SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research, as a category, works in every single category. It's actually, I didn't realize it. I spent 5 years in venture capital and I still didn't recognize, and amazing it's the best kept secret in some senses. Largest single form of seed funding in the US, close to $2 billion last year as a single source. And it basically allows large utilities and public owned entities to put out, rather than a procurement statement, but a problem statement saying, we know this problem exists. Forget all the stuff you're developing because we don't have problems for all of those solutions, but this is a genuine problem we'd like solved. Can you solve this? And we actually used a consultant from the UK health sector, who's quite busy in the health sector in the UK, to tell us how to run a program. So right now there's companies busy working on solutions, and the challenge we picked actually was, we actually had a bunch of projects, so we actually got us to look at a number of projects, but we said we'd do it in the energy sector, and in particular in the EV charging sector. And you say, well, that's all well and fine, EV, when will they happen? But actually the flip side of that is it's an IP-rich zone, so you can pull through intellectual property. And the thing about this game is the SME gets to own the IP. We fund it, we help him pilot it, and he gets a product and a reference site, and he gets to develop it out as a product. And the challenge was, you can imagine an EV, you're probably likely to live in a city, and there's a fair chance you live in an apartment. If you live in an apartment, you can't have an EV at the moment. Bad luck. Because the landlord owns the grid in the basement for the free parking and all that kind of stuff. So the challenge is to come up with a smart charging system where he identifies you through your phone, something like that. Go solve it. And that isn't a problem just for Ireland. That's a global problem. We know because Nissan and all these guys are saying, solve that, please, because we're busy doing other stuff. That'd be fantastic. So some Irish company, hopefully in the new year, will be announcing the solution to that problem and how they're going to commercialize it. And that's an initiative from our side. And I think you're aware of the North Atlantic Green Zone. This is a EU H2020 type project. People in the room better capable to talk about it, but this will be a showcase. Things are looking good. The cards are settling now on the awards and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully we'll get there and showcase a cross-border area up there in terms of energy management, i.e. the grid. So what can we do to help? There's a kind of unusual business as usual stuff there, better generation, better networks, all that kind of stuff. This is the new piece, sustainable innovation. And it's all about, actually, it doesn't work without other people. ESB is not a technology developer, but we'd like to get in earlier in the curve and help companies to develop and, tell them straight up that's never going to work, or it'll only work if you do the following things, and we'll help them test bed it. So, in short, our doors are open. We're happy to help. I have a couple of more slides if anyone wants for later on just on funding, but we'll cut it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now,